Hello, BookTube. Well, as you can see, I once again have a guest. I'm Little Miss Popularity, and my guest is Micah Cummins.
Hello.
Say hello to my imaginary BookTube friends. Some of you, if you are looking way back in time, will remember that Micah Cummins once had an active BookTube channel.
Still have, not as active, but it's still there.
Well, there, he has a toehold on BookTube.
Yes.
So there are a million questions I want to ask you about what you've been reading and what you've been doing. And I'm assuming that you're joining me for NaNoWriMo, so what you've been writing. Uh, the foremost question that everybody watching this is going to have is, where have you been? Where
Yes.
have you been?
I have been many places. Primarily, I have been the newest additions to my schedule, other than work, which takes up 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. So it's already a fairly large chunk right there.
I've
Has
already
been,
advised you to drop that.
you have, and I have not listened. I like the money too much. The money has corrupted me. I have been rock climbing. Rock climbing is something I started doing at the beginning of this year, and I've become quite a fan of it. And I go with my sister, my girlfriend, and a group of friends twice a week in the evenings after work for rock climbing. And then I've also started playing bass in a folk band with my coworkers who are also musicians and songwriters. So we've started playing together. So that's taken up a lot of time and has been a fantastic experience. I do not play bass technically. We were talking that we wanted to play music together and discussing what instruments we played, and they were saying how it would be cool if someone could play the bass. And so I got a bass and I learned how to play in about a week, and then I've been playing with them on their original songs once a week for a couple hours after work, which has been super fun. Those are the two big changes that have sort of morphed my schedule a little bit, pulling away a little bit from, or pulling out of my reading time a little bit. I'm still reading a very large amount, basically as much as I was before. I'm just not putting out the same amount of content, because when I have free time, I have to make the decision between, do I film a video talking about reading, or do I sit down and actually do the act of reading? And I had chosen to do reading over videos for the last little while, just because the reading is the most important element to me. BookTube is also important, but it's that actual physical act of reading for me that is paramount.
So we mentioned before we started filming, and I'm gathering that all my listeners are now getting the impression that I was right, that what's happening here is that you are drifting into the clutches of real life.
I am, but
We
but
don't
I
do
am not.
that
I'm
on
not
YouTube.
loosening my hold completely on BookTube, but I have been, especially over the last couple of months, just doing a lot more. I don't want to say living in the real world, because this is also very real. This is very much real.
I
It's
don't know
done
about
over
that.
it's done over over technology, or it's done in a.
If I don't seem like a fictional character, who does? I mean, honestly, yeah.
But I have proven that you are quite real. That has been proven. I wasn't sure at first. Then I flew to Boston, and I was like, and then I knew you are
Well,
real.
all right. But we can certainly draw the line at Randy Ray, the literate Texan, right? He is certainly not real.
I'm not sure if he is. That's one that has yet to be tested.
But you're saying that in between the bass playing, which I'm assuming came with a gigantic back tattoo?
Not yet.
No.
This is a folk band.
Oh, all right.
This is a
Okay, so
folk
maybe a
band.
small back tattoo.
It's plaid. It's plaid and hot tea. It's basically the musical version of a cardigan. I'm safe.
Rock climbing and work. I've advised you many times to stride into your boss's office and say you demand Steve leave. I'm told that it's not a legal concept yet.
It's
But it
people
should be.
have a hard time grasping the concept of Steve leave, and I'm hoping it'll be different for future generations.
They shouldn't have to suffer the
They
way that
shouldn't have to. It's too
But
much
in
to put
the
up with.
midst of all of that, you're saying you have kept up reading.
Yes.
Care
My
to drop a few breadcrumbs? Anything
yes.
that's really
My
stood out?
reading. So I should clarify. It's not been a vast quantity. I have intentionally slowed down my actual reading speed, because
You
I was,
mentioned that in the last video that you made in a
yes,
bottle that was found
and
off the shores of Kamchatka. You made your
yes,
last video. You're
washed ashore 20
found,
days ago.
yes. You
Um,
mentioned that you were slowing down in order to absorb
yes,
more.
in order to absorb more, because I was realizing subconsciously I was focused way more on quantity, and just wanting to read a lot of books, feeling a rush to finish a book so I could read the next book, to read the next book, to read the next book. And what I was finding was, yes, I was reading a lot of books, and I was reading, a decent amount of pages every day. So my metrics looked great. My reading spreadsheet that I keep was looking very impressive. But when I would look back on those books, or like, peruse my shelves, for example, looking for books, and trying to remember them, I was coming up with hardly anything of any substance at all. And so I realized I would rather read a small amount of books, say maybe 50 or 60 books in a year instead of 120, but be able to recount all of the nitty gritty details of each one and actually have it add something to my life. So for this month, with it being Victober, I've been reading The Victorians by A.N. Wilson. This has been on my shelf for a very long time. It's quite a big book. And this has been basically my entire month's reading, along with The Moonstone for Classics and Company, and a couple other smaller sort of essays or other portions of books. But this has been my primary reading. And I've been reading about maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours every day, really taking my time and absorbing the text, not rushing it at all. Anytime I feel myself starting to sort of slip out of the concentration of reading and my mind starts to wander, I put the book away and I go on and I do something else, because I'm trying to be very intentional with my reading time, so that when I am reading, it is a 100% connection between me and the text. There's nothing else going on in my mind. And I've found through this month particularly that even though my reading speed has slowed down, so the quantity of what I have read has become shorter, I'm coming away with a much wider knowledge base, a greater appreciation for the text, and then a more well-rounded understanding of the subject matter as well. And to me, that is far more worthwhile than having said I've already read 5 books this month, and not knowing what I had read.
So that was going to be my question, and you've sort of answered it. So this project, to be more intentional and bring intentionality to your reading by slowing down, it is working.
It is. It
Okay.
is. I have found I am much more engaged with what I'm reading. I'm also um, I'm much more protective of my reading time as well. This has been one of the first months where I have started into a book and put it away and stopped it. So I'm not going to read this. It's not for me. Usually I would push through. I would never DNF books before. I would always sort of have this guilty element of, well, I purchased this book and this author put in so many hours and so much of their life into it. Surely it's worth me reading it. And it's been this month particularly that I have learned that's not always true. Just
No.
because an author has put in lots of hours, lots of their life, lots of their time into a book does not mean that, first of all, does not mean that it's even necessarily good at any level necessarily, but it also means even if it is great, even if it's fantastic, it doesn't have to be great or fantastic for me.
Yeah, especially since
And
you're not the kind of reader who's going to decide that in 5 pages. You're going to give it a serious
right,
try.
I try to always read at least the first 100 pages or
Yeah.
so of a
If
book,
you give a book
really
a
get
serious
into it.
try and it's not doing anything for you, drop it.
And
Absolutely
I
drop
used to not do that. And especially it's this year, I think, when you put constraints on your reading schedule where you have less of it, both by outside forces but also internal forces. I have chosen to rock climb. I have chosen to play music. These are all things that I'm choosing to do. And anytime you say yes to something, you're automatically saying no to something else. And so every time I've said yes to something else, I'm saying no to coming home early from work and reading for longer. And that's something that something that I am understanding in. But I've actually found that what that has done for me is, when I now get a chance to sit down and read, I am incredibly enthusiastic about it, very protective of it, yes, but also just genuinely excited to sit down and read. Whereas before, I've always been excited to read, and I've always loved it. But I have felt a different feeling when you know, okay, today I have a 2 hour portion in this section of the day that I get to read. And so the whole time you're working towards that time period, you're working toward that part in the day. And then when you get there, you're locked in and this is your reading time. And then you go, and it's an incredibly special moment where you like been looking forward to the sort of the concentration, the focus, the art of reading. Whereas before, if I know I have this entire day, I can do as much reading as I want to, I don't get that much done because I keep putting off, well, I have the entire day. I can go do this thing. I can go do this thing. And I end up sort of futzing around for 4 hours, and then most of the afternoon is gone and I haven't read anything. Whereas when you have that sort of, when you know you have a limited amount of time, when you get to that time slot, you go all in.
So you've become a productivity bro. Is that right?
Yes.
Sounds like.
Yes, that's definitely no. I would like to say I would like to say I'm the opposite because I don't read. I don't sit down and read through 500 pages and annotate with my little highlighter and make notes and whatnot. I read quite slowly, so it's not very productive, but
The
it's
Irish Catholic
meaningful.
guilt-inducing version of what you said that I prefer is that every time you take time for something, you take time away from Steve. That's how I prefer to say that.
That is
That's
also
what you want
true.
to think is that when you take time for something, you
That
take
that is
time
also
away.
true. Saying yes to life, saying no to Steve.
So are you? It's probably redundant because it's a big seller of his, but are you enjoying the A.N. Wilson?
I am. Yes. So I have not read anything by him until now. I do have his biography of Queen Victoria that I'm hoping to read.
You haven't read his biography of Tolstoy?
I haven't. I'm looking at it right now and it's staring me back.
Wow.
So that's also and this is actually part of what was fueling me trying to read as much as possible because I have all these books that I'm super excited to get to. And so I wanted just to plow through them to get to them all. But I know that if I had done that, and then if I had sat down and read his Tolstoy biography and his Queen Victoria biography, I would be sitting here and it would be as if I hadn't read them at all. And so I have to put off that feeling. But yes, I have his Tolstoy biography on my Russian shelf, and I have his Queen Victoria biography over on my Victoria shelf. But this is my first of his that I have read. I'm really enjoying his
It did really well for him.
his style and his pacing. Um, I wasn't sure when I first started if it was going to be incredibly dry because at the beginning I wasn't quite sure how his tone was going to shift. But it's been incredibly engaging, and I think just the scope as well. I think is handled really well. Just with what he is choosing to present and what he is spending a lot of time on. I found it very interesting, sort of just seeing what he picks to give a passage to and what he picks to give a chapter to.
Right, right. And there's
Because you
the
have to.
collection going on, even in a book that big. I mean, for
Mhm.
all of the Victorian era, that's going to be a microcosm. Are you finding that his portraits of individual characters is making you want to read biographies of them?
Yes, absolutely. Particularly the prime ministers.
You-
I have not read many about them. I have a Disraeli biography by Jane Ridley that I have not read. The Young Disraeli. That is the only biography of a prime minister from the period that I have. I would love to read more about Gladstone. He seems very interesting. Have read nothing about him. And just sort of so to answer, the answer to your question is yes. His individual portraits have made me want to read more, but also just some of the period, some of the bigger elements of the period that I haven't read about. For instance, anything to do uh with India during the Victorian period. I read nothing about other than passing mentions in a biography of Queen Victoria or another book on the period. And what it's made me realize is I've become so focused on one particular class of the period in my reading that I have ignored the vast majority of those who lived during the period and the way that life was led. I have read biographies of Queen Victoria, of Prince Albert, of other members of the royal family, or of other members of sort of the high class society, which what I've already can tell from this book is a whole universe away from the way everyone else lived. And so I have a very skewed view of what I thought was the Victorian period. And then you read this, and there's layers upon layers of what I was reading of just a tiny sliver of what life was like, or what Victorian England was like, because I was reading about queens and king consorts.
So, so you're doing a lot of energetic reading. I mean, the number of books you describe per year is 50 times what most people read. So you're still in BookTube territory there.
Wait, I've read 84 books this year so far.
Now that's an enormous number compared to most people.
Right.
But okay, so you have that time, 90 minutes, 2 hours, an hour, or whatever. When you're
Right.
looking at a given day, you look at that time and it makes you more grateful, more able to concentrate on the reading.
Mhm.
But what about BookTube? What about even not even making videos? What about watching?
Watching. It's a very
I'm,
interesting question.
I'm assuming that you're grateful not to have Gina Stanier in your life anymore.
I was about to say she was the last BookTube video that I watched actually.
Well,
I
she's broken many people.
She's fantastic. I do still watch BookTube. I have my my little subscriptions feed on the YouTube app. So every day I go in and I scroll through the channels I'm subscribed to and see what videos are new. I don't always watch all of the videos, or the full portion of it. I may sort of skip around if someone leaves timestamps. I always love that because I can sort of jump around to what themes look interesting to me. But I do still watch. I'm sorely behind on your videos, and I do apologize. That's just because of the vast quantity in which they are posted.
I should put timestamps on my videos that
Oh,
say,
oh,
here, I'm brilliant. Here, also brilliant. Brilliant. I
That's
should
it.
just make the
Steve
timestamp
says
that
something fascinating. Steve says something fascinating.
just so that no one is tempted to skip.
Your whole video is a timestamp. Steve was a genius here. But no, I do. So I do still watch. I have noticed that my viewing has gone down, and primarily that is because I have this terrible problem that a lot of people I'm sure have, where you watch a booktuber who is fantastic and very interesting and very inspiring about what they're reading. You go and then either buy the books that they're talking about or add them to your reading list, and then you end up with this giant pile of books that you can't possibly read, and then you feel frustrated because you just really want to experience them so you can share the joy that they're expressing through their video. But I do still watch, not as much as I used to, but I do still.
So, what does it feel like to be in a largely post BookTube world after having been a part of it? You were doing the whole thing. You were doing tags and
I
roundups.
was. Yeah, last year before I got the job that I have now. That's a very interesting question. I will say what I have noticed just by talking with non-BookTube people and with my coworkers and my climbing friends and my music guys that I play with, who are also my coworkers, is just really how much most people do not read. Beyond, but even beyond that, how much people just like things that I take for granted about my own life, about my reading or my appreciation for history, or for sort of wanting to understand the way that life was lived before or lived by other people now, is just not a thought that crosses a whole lot of people's minds today.
Nope.
And I'm not meaning that as a jab, and I'm not meaning that as putting other people down. It's just a fact. It's just sort of it's something that has taken me by surprise a little bit
Yeah.
in conversations. If I reference something historical, or I reference a historical figure, and then just sort of realizing, oh, I probably need to explain
Yeah.
what this reference is, or who this individual is, or what they did that I'm trying to express in this conversation. Um, and again, not saying that sort of to put other people down and say, oh, look how smart I am, I know all this stuff, but more saying it's just something I didn't realize, because I had been sort of so close in my world of, oh, everyone does what I do, everyone reads
Yeah, when
every
no,
day, and everyone has
yeah,
this innate curiosity about how the world worked and how it still works for people who aren't like you, and that's not always the case.
yeah. I mean, I agree, especially with the not, condescending to people.
Right.
But decades and decades and decades ago, I went to a theater house revival of The Wizard of Oz with a friend of mine who was very. We were both extremely bookish then, and we are both extremely bookish now. And we were watching the movie, and that the famous shift when when suddenly it moves to Technicolor from black
Mhm.
and white. My friend leaned over and said, when we saw that shift, and the whole audience oohed and awed because none of them seen it on the big screen before. My friend
Right.
leaned over to me and said, "That's reading." And I
Hmm.
thought, okay, I can't think of a better illustration than that.
That
We're still
shift
watching a
of
really heartfelt, well done movie, but that's the difference between reading and not reading. I
right,
think,
a black and white world versus you step into this radiant color.
yeah, it's just more. You're not saying that the people who don't do it are dumb,
No.
but they
Or
are missing
not
out.
even saying that they don't have an appreciation for life or an appreciation for
Oh yeah,
learning.
they can appreciate
They
life.
they
Absolutely.
still can. A lot of the people that I know that I talk to who I know don't read a whole lot, they are some of the most appreciative people that I know, or the most adventurous, or they have a capacity of wonder that I also have. I have it through books. They have it through the tangible elements of life. But that's a great analogy of sort of stepping into a full color scape.
So, do you miss being doing the active booktube thing?
I do.
Sound
I
like you'll
do.
be going back to it anytime soon.
I'm hoping to. I mean, I'm trying to put out. I've been meaning to put out a video every week, and then it slipped for 2 weeks. I still really enjoy doing my reading update videos, sort of letting people know what I'm reading and interacting in comments. And I've been tagged in a couple of tag videos that I do look forward to doing. What I'm trying to figure out now is I want to always put forward quality content on my channel. And so I want to have good videos because I know people are busy. And so when someone subscribes to my channel or someone wants to watch my videos, I take that as a great honor, but also a great responsibility of this person wants to see what I'm reading or they want to hear me discussing books. So I need to make sure that it's worthwhile for their time because they're on a limited time frame as well. And so I don't want to just make some random video that doesn't mean anything that then they're going to watch and waste 5 minutes or 10 minutes of their day.
You're
And
talking gibberish here. What are
and
you
so
talking about?
I'm trying to figure out how I can continue to create content that I want attributed to my name that I also feel will add something to other people's lives while reading less. Because the only downside of my new reading style of really slowing down and getting into the weeds and really sort of wrestling with what I'm reading is that, for instance, I've been reading this book since October 1st. That was 20 days, 21 days ago. And so I can be making reading update videos where I'll say, I've been reading The Victorians by A.N. Wilson. And then the next video, I'm reading The Victorians. And I can be saying, I could say the new things that I've learned, but a lot of times it'll be like I'm still reading about, I'm still wrestling with what I was reading last week. And so I really don't have any fermented thoughts yet about what I want to present about it. And so then I feel like no one wants to watch an update video where I just keep saying I'm reading the same book every day for for 21 days. People are going to get bored by that. And so I have to sort of figure out how can I step out of the booktube staple videos because I don't necessarily have time to always be doing tag videos on Tuesdays or these different themes that we've fallen into, which I love and really enjoy doing. How then can I still be on booktube present as a creator in booktube without um without having to follow the exact formula that I used to follow?
It sounds almost like you're describing a trap that you have escaped. Do you think it's possible that BookTube creates an attitude in people, especially people new to BookTube, that they need to do more, that
I
everything needs to be new?
I think it might, and not I don't mean that in a negative way.
No, but you hear
And
that
I
criticism a
because
lot of
it's a
people doing book
fantastic
launches.
thing. and I loved it. And I think when someone has the availability and the time to do it, I would highly encourage them to go all the way in and to do all of the formula videos and to do all of the videos that you do on the days that you do them, all of the tags and all of the Q&A videos, because it's incredibly fun to do, and it's a fantastic community. I would say that I think from what I've noticed, especially when a creator leaves BookTube, which is something I don't plan on doing. I do plan on morphing my schedule and maybe posting less, but not leaving, because I do like it. What I noticed is when people do leave, they often talk about the time constraint and the sort of pressure to keep up with all of these videos. And then you add new things of not just the videos that you create, but the interactions that you are not expected or required, but that you tend to do with other people's videos, leaving comments on other people's videos, watching other people's videos, but beyond that, hosting a live stream, joining a live stream, participating in a live stream or a reading sprint, or all these things that take place outside of your own content creation, outside of your own personal reading and personal viewing. And so it becomes this giant thing of what you're supposed to put out and then how you're supposed to engage with the same amount of content that everyone else is putting out as well. And then also you're supposed to be reading 100 books a year on top of all of that. So I wouldn't necessarily call it a trap, but I would say that there can be, I think it can become sort of trapping, not in a negative way, but I do think that that element is alive there.
We should, there are two sides of it. It's double-edged. We should stress, if this video is being watched by people who are brand new to BookTube or who are thinking about starting, maybe you have a brand new channel and you've seen very little traction so far, we should stress that what Micah is describing here is a community. And what he's describing, suddenly you're on someone else's live stream, or you're part of a buddy read, or you're part of a group read or an event, that will happen. If you make friendly, engaging, outgoing content, that will happen. So if you're not worried about that, the drain on your time, but you are worried that it's never going to happen to you, it will. It absolutely will happen.
You will receive an email, or if you are on Voxer and you put your handle out, you will get a message one day, hey, love your videos. Would you be interested in reading such and such book with me next month, or joining my live stream? Or that's how it happened for me. I made videos, and then one day I got an email from someone wanting to do a buddy read, or I got an invitation to participate in an event, to come on Steve's channel. I remember I emailed Steve saying his channel inspired me to start my own channel, and then next thing I knew, we were on a Zoom call together, and then I was opened up to lots of other booktubers who wanted to read with me or have me on.
And then in no time at all, you were in an easy chair at Hyde Cottage with Frida screaming at you.
pinned between Frida and Steve.
This horrible fate ball.
It will happen to you.
If you're not careful, you'll be in Boston and Frida will be screaming at you.
It will happen. You will black out and then wake up on an American Airlines flight to Boston. Not sure how you got there.
There'll be the brattle.
There will be, and it is worth it.
So if it's a double-sided thing, on the one hand, the encouraging note we could give to new booktubers is that community will find you. That will happen. There are plenty of us out there who will do our best to be part of the process of that community finding you. But on the other hand, you're not the first person I've heard this from, that sometimes it can almost feel like a rat wheel. I haven't done a book haul in a long time. I only have the same books to talk about. I'm working on the same books for 3 weeks. And suddenly, where before BookTube that would not have made you self-conscious, it suddenly does now. That's the negative side of it, definitely.
Right.
If
I was sitting alone in a room and I have been spending 3 weeks on a book, I wouldn't care.
Right.
But suddenly you add this presentation element of, oh, I feel kind of self-conscious that I'm still reading this same book 3 weeks later, when this guy over here, he's already read 12 books, or he's already done this, and I haven't done that yet. I don't want to post a video where I'm not doing something new. Whereas before, if you were just alone, you wouldn't care.
So you're saying the problem is me?
You are not necessarily the guy. I just use that as an example.
Okay, but or
You
as
don't
a
really
nice
even
save, but
count. I feel like you're above most everyone else on BookTube. We just
I would like to think that people would keep me in a category aside. I
because
do only this. I
we'll
only
just
do
curl up and die if we have to try to compare our channels to yours.
well,
You
not
put
because
out
my channel is any better, but because I only read. Whereas
right.
the rest
And
of you,
over the last 3 days, you've put out the same amount of videos that I have on my entire channel.
I was
All my
going to talk
often
about what
read
I
as
read
many
last
books as
night,
I have read
but now I
this
feel
year.
self-conscious.
No, it's good. It's good because then when people like me have to sort of dip out a little bit, your channel keeps content flowing into BookTube. You fill the void
Yes,
when creators have to step back a little bit.
mainly because I've unshackled myself from that business you mentioned about putting out quality content. Who has time to do that?
Maybe I'll just give up as well. Just give in.
No, I read spy fiction last night. Spy fiction and men's thriller fiction. I was naughty last night. I did not do any work reading. I did not read any new or
Yeah.
forthcoming books. I read Bear Island by Alistair MacLean because his name came up, I think, in a live stream last night. People wanted to know, is he any good? And if people had asked me a month ago, how good is Len Dayton? I'd have said he's really, really good. But then I read a couple of his that weren't good. So last night I reread Bear Island by Alistair MacLean, and it's terrific. I would have considered it a minor Alistair MacLean, but boy, oh boy, if that's minor, then maybe I need to do a lot more rereading of this author.
Mm.
But I also read another Len Dayton. I read Mamista, a big book of his that isn't much like it. It certainly isn't anything like I remembered it from. I read it when it first came out, but it also isn't anything like I remember any of his other books being. Good, but I don't know. Len Dayton has suddenly become this weird Schrodinger's author where I thought I knew him and now I don't know that I
Well,
do
now it has to be on a book by book basis,
on a book by book basis.
a
Exactly.
revisitation basis of his books.
So this freedom of yours, this new intentionality, that's a big thing on YouTube. You could make an intentionality channel, be raking in
Yeah,
the dough.
that's then I could quit that job and have more reading time.
Mhm. But
Which is another thing I have to decide. YouTube keeps pushing me to monetize my channel, and I have not done that yet. But
yeah,
if you don't do it, they keep pestering you about it.
yeah, yeah. YouTube's made a couple of changes recently. One is to increase the pestering for monetization, and the other is to remove ad blocks. Can't block ads on YouTube anymore, and those are obviously coordinated.
Right, and I have not monetized my channel again because I value my viewers' time too much. I don't want them to sit through a 30-second unskippable ad.
Yeah, but I think the pestering plus the no ad block, if you put those together, I think my prediction from a couple of years ago, I might have been off in the time frame, but I don't think it was off in the reality that soon it will not be an option. You will
No,
have to make money.
no, they'll just go ahead. They'll just go ahead and do it for you.
Well, you're broadcasting on their airwaves, so to
Right,
speak, to use antiquated language. You're broadcasting.
right. They have the ability to do that.
It's kind of crazy that they wouldn't make as much money off you as they could.
Right,
Uh,
just from a business standpoint.
but what was my point going to be about that?
Oh, you said intentionality.
Oh, right. This intentionality of yours, does it preclude you thinking about what books you want next? Does it shut down, for instance, you going book shopping? Has that
That's
taken?
an interesting point. It does not. I have gone the last 3 or 4 weeks. I have gone book shopping over the weekends, and I will say it does. I've been buying a lot of books that I have read from the library that I don't own, that I'll see on the shelf. Oh, I read this and I really enjoyed it. So then I bring home a book that's already been read.
Mhm.
Or it just it makes me think a lot more about the books that I do buy. I still have a very long TBR. I still have a very long reading list, or the list I take with me when I go book shopping of these are the books that I'm looking for, that I want to try to find. I will say it stopped the impulse buying. I used to say, oh, I don't have a lot of this genre, whatever genre, fill in the blank, represented on my shelves. I should go buy a couple books in this genre. So I would go and maybe message you about something, or already have a list of something and go, oh, I'll just buy 3 novels from this author and stack them away on my shelf. I had that with a lot of Penguin classics of, oh, I want a good representation of classics in my library. I want to read more. So let's just go buy some Penguin classics of books that look interesting. And so I've stopped doing that so much just because I don't want to have a bunch of shelves with just a bunch of paper and ink on them that have no meaning to me.
Plus, you must be more reluctant to do that now that the amount of reading is going down.
Yes.
I would imagine that if you know you're going to read 100 books a year, you're going to be less inclined to just fill an armload of books when you're at a bookstore.
Right, because I'll say now, a shelf that used to be maybe just a couple months of reading has now become maybe half a year of reading. And so I don't want to have an entire bookcase empty. That could represent a decent chunk of my future life. I want to have it where it's a little bit more manageable.
I read 100 books during this Zoom call.
I was going to say, you basically read what I read very much quicker.
But anyway, Zoom is telling me that we're almost out of time. And
Yes,
I'm trying to be an adult book Zoom chatter here where we don't cut off in mid-sentence.
There we go.
Let's say goodbye now.
Yes.
And we'll do a follow-up video in another month.
Absolutely. Or sooner, maybe. Could happen. Wonderful. Thank you, Steve.
Be nice. But in the meantime, enjoy your rock climbing and your folk music. Real life. Oh, has it come to this?
Come to life. Thank you, Steve. Bye, everyone.